We are looking at figure 5.9 on page 104 of your textbook. This graph initially starts at the marginal damage curve shown here by the curve called MD, and a marginal abatement cost curve that is named MAC, and starts on the horizontal axis at E, let's call it E0. So E0 is the level of unrestrained pollution. If we let everybody in society just pollute without keeping them responsible for the pollutants, they would pollute a maximum of this pollutant of E0. Now we can decide, listen, it's important to decrease the emissions of this pollutant from E0 to E2. So why E2? Because E2 is where the marginal damages and marginal abatement cost crosses each other, and that means the total social cost would be minimized, meaning its socially efficient level is E2. But now it's a very difficult policy that we propose, and it would have certain costs to implement it. So then this would cause the abatement cost to increase from MAC to MAC plus E. So E stands here for the enforcement cost. So MAC is the amount companies have to pay in order to get the machinery and the expertise and changes in order to reduce emissions. But now there's a certain enforcement cost, meaning the government also have to pay people to monitor and sanction the companies, which is expensive. Therefore, the marginal abatement cost increased. It shifted up. Now we are at a new equilibrium, and this equilibrium has an efficient level of emissions of E1. Can you see E1 is higher than E2, meaning we are at a higher level of emissions because the enforcement cost shifted the marginal abatement cost curve upward. So the difference between these two curves at every point gives me my enforcement, the cost of enforcing this policy. And can you see initially the cost of enforcing this policy is quite small, and later on the cost of enforcing this policy is quite large. It's because initially people will be maybe compliant with this policy because it's kind of cheap for them to reduce emissions. But as we go closer to zero, it gets more and more expensive for people to comply with the policy. Therefore, they might deviate and try to not comply, and the enforcement costs will increase. This graph is very important. You should be able to draw it. More importantly, you should be able to understand it very well and explain it in an essay format.